there would be a possibility of me being able to go over and get like 100%.
Oh yeah, you can definitely get as many points as you want. You can get 70 and get a C, you can get 80 and get a B, you can get 90 and get an A. You can try to break records, because I often have people ending up with way over 100 points because they just like to see how many points they can get and have the bragging rights. So I'd like to talk about this new requests discussion, and I found it really intriguing, and I thought that the comments that everybody made were very important. So when I graded this assignment and the journal assignment about frustration, anger, the anger journal, I didn't give anybody who did it full credit, because I just want whoever wrote them to check back in and to acknowledge that they saw my responses, or Nick and Aaliyah, if you want to throw in some responses here too, then I want to make sure that it's a dialogue, not just a one-way discussion. So part of what I found interesting is that many students suggested that we think about a project in which we can start to make the changes. So this is actually one of the goals of the class, is that we start thinking about ways to make change and start thinking about the processes through which we can interact without getting burnt out, without getting too tired, and as we balance everything else, because we've learned from the people we have studied. So, yeah?
I love Kanisha's
Idea?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Kanisha always has really good ideas. And so when we think about the PowerPoint, as we go through the steps, I'm going to put many of these ideas in context, because, if Kanisha wants to say that the monsters are people who silence or shame the LGBTQ plus community, then one of the steps in the process is to think about what you would really say to them, using as many expletives as you would like. And then the actual process of thinking about how we would go about changing these issues is a little bit different. But the reason there's that Dear Monsters section is you have to vent your anger and frustration with people before you can continue forward to work with people and to bridge the gap with the Karens and the racists of the world, or the anti-LGBTQ plus homophobic people, whatever. Kayla, again, mentioning racism and sexuality, and if she means the intersection of those two things, the specific racist stereotypes about sexuality are different. In one of my classes yesterday, I think, yeah, it was yesterday, we went into this discussion of Jennifer Lopez's Derriere, because I guess there's a documentary about her, and she talks about how, as a Latina woman, interviewers always, consistently, for 10 years, asked her about her backside or commented on her backside. And I don't think Madonna had that problem, the specific things that they ask people. And then, again, Ayana saying, let's think about how we can combine these ideas about having role plays or some kind of performative event. Now, I would love for us to be able to have an event on campus as a class. And in the past, I've had a class just meet in the CLC and interact with people passing through. And that project was about microaggressions. Microaggressions. But we could very easily, if we could figure out a time to convene on the CLC or the library or something, we could definitely do an in-person project. So as we go through all of this, there's a lot of common ideas. Lydia said, I want to know when it's okay to speak up and to stand up for yourself. And so people tend not to do that. How do you do that? And the whole process, really, of things in this PowerPoint, I'm hoping will answer all of these questions for you. And then I can't scroll down to Amaya's comment, but thinking about someone who inspires us, because part of the imaginative aspect of the PowerPoint project is that we just imagine doing something with the influencer who inspires us. So the PowerPoint has 8 pages because there are steps, and those are not just random things. Those are research steps that are involved in preparing yourself to stand up, speak out, create projects, intervene in a way that is safe and empowering for you. Because sometimes if you just get triggered at a particular moment and go off, which I used to do all the time, it's not very productive, says the person with ADD. So it's, it can be a difficult thing to do. So with some of these questions in mind, I can send out a poll maybe to see if people actually would like to do a project on campus, and when we might be able to do that. But that is a little bit of a pipe dream. But again, there are organizations on campus that are starting to pick back up after COVID, and coming into those organizations that are coalition-based and intersectional will deal with the issues that a lot of people are fake. And I'm smiling at you because nobody knows why I'm smiling, right? But it's a good way to meet like-minded people who are, and you're not the only person who struggles to meet like-minded people who are kind, who care about humanity. So there are organizations through which we can eventually work in these things in a more social context. So that said, if everybody remembers to reply to the discussions, second what people say, add to the ideas, etc., then I will go through and I'll add more points to the original posters and to the repliers. Yeah? Do you have a question? Oh, okay. So, whoops, I didn't mean to, where did the whole thing go? Okay, sorry, I think I closed that page too much. I always click the wrong thing. So that said, we were going to go through and start just kind of answering questions and going through this PowerPoint for week 10 that is about influencing change. However, we instead listened to 13 minutes of Unbound, and that particular section was about Tarana's very open, candid narrative of people reacting to her as though she is ugly and treating her like she's less than human, doesn't belong, etc. And there are various reasons that because of how you're embodied, your physical appearance, you might get that reaction. People who are disabled often get those kind of reactions or get a kind of cold looking away. People who are LGBTQ plus face a tremendous amount of scorn if with the way they speak or carry themselves or dress or wear a rainbow shirt, whatever brings people's attention. So we talked a little bit about the importance of seeing each other, and it's kind of to be seen, to feel seen is kind of a thing now, right? What would you say that means, to feel seen or to be seen? So I'm not going to try to explain it from my old lady perspective. Nick, what would make you feel seen?
That's a good question. I have nothing off the top of my head.
If you're walking along and somebody says, "How's the air up there?" I'm guessing you don't feel seen.
I feel like I'm already seeing enough though. Still, like,
Watched.
I play basketball.
Yeah.
Or watch.
Yeah.
I say watch because I play basketball. So
Yeah.
It's like everyone kind of know the basketball players on campus. So.
Yeah.
And it's like you always have a target on your back. So.
Yeah. What if a classmate said, "Hey, I listened to the recording from class on Halloween, and the way you tell stories is really cool"? Would that be different than people saying, "Hey, good game the other day"?
Yeah, because it's like, most of the time, people only see me as a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
Like most basketball players, like don't really, or basketball players are known for only like
The sport.
they like sports, or, like just
Yeah.
interactive in general. So
Yeah.
it'd be pretty cool to be like noticing a different perspective in sports. So.
Yeah. To be seen for the kind of progress-minded
guess you could say, like, you've seen
activist.
as like a regular
Yeah,
being than an athlete.
that's true, as a regular student.
Yeah.
But you've also been part of activism too. So, so what I'm talking about here is that when we walk past one another on campus or anywhere, I think it's important to make eye contact with people and to just smile. I mean, there's the nod. There's kind of a head nod that is an acknowledgement among African Americans, and particularly in white spaces, that's encouraging. I think we can learn another great lesson from African American culture about seeing each other and acknowledging each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, Aaliyah, what would it take for you to feel seen? You had like 3 minutes to think about it. You gonna think about it? What? What'd you say? I'm sorry. You know what we're talking? Have you heard this thing about being seen?
I've heard about it. So.
Yeah. Suzanne and I compete over who's older, so our old lady version is gonna be.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. I was thinking about that when you said it. So, being seen. I just think it's important to recognize people.
Mhm.
Years ago, when I was younger, I heard this. I forget what it was called. It's some kind of speech or something, and they talked about celebrating each other. And I thought, wow, what a concept.
Yeah.
To be able, I mean, even if the person has all these faults, find, and you may not even particularly care for them, find something that you can say that's positive about them, even if it's, what they're wearing.
Yeah.
Or the way their hair is that day.
Yeah.
They may not have the best personality in your opinion,
Mm-hmm.
but what they may be wearing that day looks really nice on them. It's very complimentary. Celebrate it.
Yeah. And in our current political culture, where we have like crazy people breaking into houses to like beat an old man over the head, and it's on both sides too. Like the vitriol and the scorn and the way our supposed political leaders speak to each other and about each other, I think is having a trickle-down effect. Worse than Ronald Reagan's trickle-down economics, we might even call it a pissing-down effect. So, pardon my French. We'll get to that phase where we get to use bad language in a minute. Now, one of the really beautiful examples and this is something that I also copied from Ayana's post as well, in Toni Morrison's novel, The Bluest Eye, which she wrote to make people think about what they're doing when they look at others, in particular because the novel is about, in part, a little girl who gets destroyed and crushed by the way people look at her, which is very similar to the way people were looking and are possibly still looking at Tarana Burke. And Toni Morrison says her goal in writing that novel was people would see themselves and feel shame for what they had done, not pity the little girl in the novel. And Toni Morrison said she failed as a novelist because she thinks that people didn't get it and didn't feel shame for how they look at others. That instead they decided to just pity, oh, the poor little black girl. Well, she's not the problem. The problem is something that all the rest of us have to change, because it is not appropriate, civil, proper, human, Christian, spiritual, Muslim, Buddhist. It's nothing right or good about not seeing another human being and focusing on the good. There's nothing about that that is a positive contribution to the world. So Toni Morrison says, and this is a really beautiful part of the book where you're supposed to feel the shame. The little girl goes into a shop to buy some candy, and the shopkeeper is looks at her like everyone else does. So Toni Morrison writes, she looks up at him and sees the vacuum where curiosity ought to lodge. Because when we look at another person, we should be curious. We should recognize another human and think, oh, what's this person's story? What's this person going to bring to the table? That kind of looking for the celebration of humanity that you mentioned. And something more. She sees a vacuum, an empty space where curiosity ought to lodge, but also the total absence of human recognition, the glazed separateness. And this is another version of the mask, of the veil, of how people use seeing and looking to perpetuate racism. The glazed separateness, kind of painting over your eyes, this idea that because someone looks somewhat different, or you're looking at them as different, that they're not worthy. She does not know what keeps his glance suspended, perhaps because he is a grown man, or perhaps because he is grown or a man and she a little girl. And then I thought I copied the rest of it, sorry. Okay. But she has seen interest, disgust, even anger in grown male eyes. Yet this vacuum is not new to her. It has an edge. Somewhere in the bottom lid is the distaste. She has seen it lurking in the eyes of all white people. So, the distaste must be for her blackness. All things in her are flux and anticipation, but her blackness is static and dread. And it is the blackness that accounts for, that creates the vacuum edged with distaste in white eyes. So I guess this might be a moment of internalized racism too. So I think just thinking about I think we could even create a project about looking and just ask people, pair people who don't have a lot in common and just ask people to look at each other. I mean, it makes people uncomfortable and it's weird, but then ask a few questions of each other and find out about the curiosity that is supposed to reside, the celebration of who that person is, in addition to a black person, a queer person, a basketball player, an old lady. Because we try to be cool as old ladies. It's just hard. So in this is the idea of the project. So like it says, it's an envisioning exercise. And initially, those chapters in Unbound might or should make you angry, just like that description of looking at that little girl with distaste, with damning her blackness to nothingness that she internalizes. Should make us angry because there's nothing worthwhile in that for human beings. When we look at the PowerPoint, but only that doesn't have to be what makes you angry. You can pick whatever you want to be angry about. And then there's a process to kind of go through for the conversation. So I'm going to stop for a minute and just give everybody a chance to think, because I don't want to make a whole bunch of long videos.